sound. That's totally different. Okay. Hi, I'm Marjorie Healy, and welcome to another episode of Behind the White Picket Fence, where life is both messy and beautiful. Today I have on Natassia with me, a mother of two boys aged 8 and 5. A few years ago, Natassia receives what she so eloquently calls a knock on the door that woke her up to the fact that she had abandoned herself. In other words, things were feeling out of alignment. As she begins her journey back home, she is jarred once again with the unexpected passing of her husband. She was now left to not only raise and support her two beautiful boys on her own, she also had the equally daunting task of reconnecting to herself while grieving. Today we are going to discuss the rituals and practices she put in place to embark on this parallel journey, what it means and feels like on a practical and emotional level to be a solo parent, and finally the intricacies of building not just any village, but the one necessary to move forward with courage, grace, and love. Welcome, and thank you for feeling brave enough to be here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I think we've met via social media.
We did,
I should
yeah.
tell our listeners. And after kind of learning a little bit more about you and your story, I felt it was just a nice thing to share with others because I'm sure, while no one's journey is exactly the same, I'm sure what you've been through, other people could relate to. So I think my first question and the best place to start is with rituals and practices because I think we all want to know how. How and what do you do when life has handed you more than you thought you could manage?
That's a great question. And I mean, if you would have asked me this question 4 years ago, my answer would be really different. I think there's a lot of distraction that I would use prior. But now I've been able to, with the support of many people in my life, been able to create a really healthy toolbox of rituals that I can tap into when I feel anxiety, when I feel overwhelmed. And just to share a few of those, I mean, journaling has been something that has been so powerful for me.
Right.
To the point where it's a part of my morning routine. It probably started off by doing the 5-minute journal to now it being just putting pen to paper and just letting what naturally flows out just land on paper.
Yeah, like a free writing, so to speak.
Free writing, yeah. And it's such a powerful tool for reflection. Like sometimes I'm even just writing and noticing something coming up that I didn't even necessarily know that was wanting to exert itself outside of me.
Right.
And I have found it just to be such a great way to even just get out certain emotions. When I am feeling, even if I'm feeling happy, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a tool of, when I'm feeling sad or overwhelmed, it's a gratitude practice at the same time. So journaling has been a really powerful ritual for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy to hear that because I don't know, out of my practices, I don't know if I've really leaned into journaling. So to hear how it has helped you is so nice. I think it's something that's maybe inspiring me to keep my journal closer to me when I wake up or before I go to sleep at night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have like a little area in my place which has in the morning when I do my morning routine, it has my journal in there. It has my yoga mat in there. It has all the things that I need. So having it just in one spot together. And yeah, I mean, journaling I definitely found it to be a little bit challenging to start off with, just because I'm oh, what am I supposed to write about? So I found it actually quite useful to start off with those journals that already come with those pre-prompts.
A prompt
Already. You're what am I grateful for? And things like that. And as I started using those, my next journal, I'm just like one. And even though I did still utilize, online tools to find some journal prompts, it just naturally started coming to me in different ways, creating my own prompts as well.
Right. And also an example of how a ritual that you put in place started out one way and has expanded as you grow. Because I think one thing you said that I just want to peel back to is when you said distraction, because I think I even remember going back to a time I was struggling, and I think someone gave me that advice. Well, just distract yourself,
Right.
and that's a funny way to get through something versus feeling your way through the experience because it's easy to distract ourselves in today's world.
Yeah, and ultimately, when you're doing that, you're suppressing the emotions even further down.
Right.
And I think that that was really what that knock on the door was for me. Was,
Right.
for so long I would just be like feeling a certain way, and I'd go and turn on Netflix, or I would scroll Instagram for hours, or just anything along those lines of just suppressing what was coming up.
Right.
And you get to that point where it's like, no, like you are so out of alignment, and like this is like now boiling above. And so it's hard. It's hard. Of course, I still get those moments where I'm like, I don't want to lean into this. This is uncomfortable, and it'd just be so much easier to put on a show and escape the reality. And that's not to say that I don't have those moments still, because I want to be true to that as well. That there's definitely those moments that, but they're not as often. And I definitely know that there's an awareness of knowing that this isn't actually gonna help me get to like the root of what I'm feeling. So yeah, getting into that and getting into like the reflection and getting just quiet with yourself and letting what you're feeling come out in the form of paper is just such a beautiful thing. And then to have that piece, like that tangible book, to be able to look back on years later and being like, I was here and now I'm here, and just almost get that journey with you, like in your, like I said, in a tangible form.
Yeah,
So
that's so interesting. I actually have a friend that I write to that has been integral in my healing journey, and he even said to me, "Look back at some of your old messages."
mm,
And it's a little bit difficult to look back because I see a different version of myself that is also uncomfortable. And but I think what you said is so interesting because and beautiful. I want to highlight this in that I think when it's so icky and when it feels so the emotion feels overwhelming that you would rather distract yourself than feel it, and it's so tempting, and you're right. Even though I'm sure the most healed person will at times just choose that option, but I know for me, I've actually stopped wanting to distract myself. I actually want to feel it because I know if I feel it all the way through, it'll just be a beautiful release.
right.
So I don't want to hold on to it anymore.
Yeah.
So what is your experience with that? Do you feel the same at this
Yeah,
point?
yeah. I mean, absolutely. And in terms of it being that beautiful release, that is like just such. I love the way that you put that, because it really is a release.
Yes.
It's just and it's an acknowledgement. Like when you are distracting, like I said, I'll go back to the fact that you're ignoring it, you're suppressing it. But when you are getting quiet and you're actually giving that feeling or that emotion or that specific situation your attention, you're allowing yourself the opportunity to almost like become friends with it, and like then just see like, how is this serving me or how is this not serving me,
Right.
and be able to just deal with it in a much healthier way. I know that's so like high level in saying that, but it's just, I have just found so much of I just found it to be such a healthier release, as well as being able to move past it. I want to say move past it a lot quicker, but yeah, you're just
sort of.
you kind of are. I mean, if you're acknowledging something and you are going through those motions of becoming friends with it, you really are giving it that opportunity to like shift
Right.
shift into the more positive side of it, right? So
Do you find you're less afraid of it? I think a lot of people are afraid of their feelings, and I've said this often that confidence is really about knowing that no matter what situation you find yourself in, that you'll have the ability to handle it emotionally. Because if you're not afraid of the uncomfortable feelings or the discomfort that some of those feelings can bring you, then you won't be afraid to do anything or to try anything or to be anything. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I would say it definitely like has built a form of resilience Like
Yes.
resilience is like what's coming for me when you're saying it that way.
Right.
Is we can actually navigate and get through a lot of things that, we didn't think that we could, or we're distracting ourselves from getting through.
Right.
So absolutely, I definitely agree with that point.
Yeah. I always don't like I had to kind of come up with a way to help my clients through this because I would say, the same thing as you. Just it's okay. There's feelings. Some of them are uncomfortable, some of them are comfortable, but how do you face it? So I came up with three lines and I'm curious to run them by you.
Okay.
I came up with when you first feel it to say, I wouldn't be human if I wasn't having this emotional experience. So that's the first thing I ask them to help themselves.
Right.
The second thing I say to them is you're likely not alone in experiencing this, and actually you're completely unlikely not to be alone in experiencing this because anyone in your position would probably feel the exact same way if the events were transpiring to you the same as they were transpiring for me. We'd probably very likely have similar reactions,
Yes, yeah.
or similar emotional reactions. And then my third thing I tell them is once you recognize one and two, just send yourself so much love and compassion for what's happening.
Yeah.
Because I think people don't have, like, we can say all the right things, like you said, like it sounds so cliche to say, I'm going through this in a healthier way. But if we don't have somewhere to start, I mean, maybe those three things will look different for everyone. But I wanted to give my clients a place to start.
And what a great place to start, because those are, I actually really like those 2 points, and
Yeah.
especially how it ties up in that third point.
Yeah.
For me, like just reflecting back on what you just said, it goes back to the compassion that a ritual like this actually allows you to have for yourself.
Right.
I have found that for me, like the journaling piece, and as I go into sharing like my next ritual, which is meditation,
Right.
it's really about getting curious with ourselves, right? And
I
like
love that.
curious about like where is that emotion coming from? What in my past has created a certain narrative around this feeling that I'm having,
Right.
and how true is that narrative,
Right.
right? So getting curious with myself, and then that actually moves into having compassion for myself.
Right. Well, I love that you said brought up meditation because I have a saying. I say, like all roads lead to Rome. That saying. I say all meditation leads to hell. And so talk to me about meditation because it has a real cliche to it. I think there's a lot of different ways to meditate. I don't do guided. I do a self-guided meditation. Sometimes I fight with it. Sometimes I don't want to, but I tell people the best place to start is to daydream and then get curious about your daydreams. So talk to me about your meditation because I feel like this is our way. This is our like this road to coming home to ourselves, to answering the knock on the door, to emotionally healing, our experiences thus far is meditation.
Yeah. And I do have some notes here that I have just noted down, because I can talk, if I don't keep myself on track about meditation, I will just go on forever. So if you see me kind of like reflecting back and looking at these, it's just some notes, because like I said, I can talk about meditation forever. It was challenging for me to start, because when you are so used to, and now what I'm realizing is like operating on autopilot and operating from a place of fear. I recognize now that I have lived so much of my life from a place of fear.
Right.
It's so fear driven or fear led.
Right.
And I just like, I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to do that anymore. And it's helped me just like reconnect back to like my soul self, and just living more from a place of my soul and presence. So meditation for me, like if I can sum it up in any way, it's really just brought me back to like this moment in time, like the specific. And when I'm saying this moment in time, that can be like just you and I here sitting here, presence with my kids, presence with my current situation, whatever that may be that I'm dealing with, as opposed to worrying about what's to come or what's happened in the past.
Right.
So just getting really still and quiet. And I did have a challenging start to meditation because I'm just like, I can't quiet the monkey mind. And what I had envisioned meditation to be is just like this Zen experience where you're just completely quiet with yourself and, you know, nothing is going through your head. But in reality, like meditation is really, those thoughts aren't, we're human. Those thoughts are going to come about the thought about what am I going to do after this meditation? What's my to do list? But for me, what's been so powerful is just reconnecting back with my breath. And that actually brings me back into my body as opposed to my mind. So for me, and there's this beautiful quote that I've read, and I can't remember who it's by, but it's almost like it's the journey from like your mind back to your heart.
Oh, I love that.
I'll have to find it and I'll share it with you. But it's just that's really what meditation has been for me. It's coming from here back into like my heart. And you just every time I've had those moments where I'm meditating and I have the thought of like for dinner or it's the practice of pulling yourself back to your breath or whatever your mantra is in that meditation. I do a lot of guided meditations, but I've also now started transitioning into just having like frequency sounds and doing more of like a self-guided meditation or just having like a specific mantra for that meditation when I am just using like healing sounds or something like that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I know I invite all of my listeners to dip into it somehow, even if it's 5 minutes just to start.
Right.
Just to start. I think my first meditation was actually in the room setting in. And it was actually euphoric. And then I started judging my other meditations, so I had to work through that. But you're right. I think we do have that mind that does like to run its own show, and breathing our way back into our hearts is a beautiful way to explain it. I love it.
Yes.
Okay, do you want to share any other practices before I ask you my next question?
I mean, I would say that the next practice has just been like movement. Okay. Movement is so key, and whether that's in the form of like just walking or doing yoga or working out, movement has been such a powerful tool for me as well, especially when it comes to anger and especially when it comes to feeling overwhelmed or sadness. Like just getting that feeling, moving it through, and it's not to get rid of it, but it's just, it's shifting it through the body. And I have found that to be a really powerful experience for me as well in terms of the rituals that I have incorporated to help me through some challenging times.
Yeah, and I get why. I was just actually watching what I call the school of Instagram. Yeah. And it was about movement and hope molecules and saying we can actually develop hope through movement. But I think so many of our feelings come with somatic sensations, physical sensations. So I do believe that moving your body does help move those emotions through you. And again, not as a distraction, but as just a way of energetically feeling all of your feelings. I love lifting weights and going for long walks and that kind, and yoga and that kind of movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, like if I can do any of those workouts outdoors, like just having bare feet to like earth has been so powerful for me. Like this time of year, I get so excited about because I'm just like, wear my shoes and often outside because there's just something, it's grounding. It's just there's such a grounding feeling with just the connection to earth, but also like it just grounds you within yourself. Like I can feel that physical sensation of actually grounding within myself, and my feet naturally like just touch the grass. Yeah, just to be outside. Yeah. Right. I know, and we have Mother Nature at our fingertips. Yes. And we live in one of the most beautiful provinces in the world. Absolutely. So we should all be getting outside. Yeah. Okay, so I also have notes because I didn't want to talk to me about this because while what you've been through is so deeply moving, and I think that it didn't allow you to run away. It was so jarring that you had to start to develop these practices to face it. But
but you are now a solo parent, and I don't think people really understand what that means and what that looks like. So can you share with our listeners or my listeners what that is? Because it's I think people don't understand when it all falls on you, and I'm sure there's others out there. There's such a shift, and I just thought you probably have some words of wisdom to impart here for us.
Yeah, I mean, I it's there's just so much that I can say, but at the same time, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like that is the only way that I can explain it. And the only other thing that I can really say to you is that even though I am a solo parent, I do have a really big village behind me. So I will definitely speak to that. But at the end of the day, the responsibility of those two boys is solely mine.
Right.
And so from a day-to-day perspective, the challenges of just not having someone to like tap like I need a second, right? And my boys are young, like you noted, like they're 8 and 5. So they and their dad passed away almost 2.5 years ago. So at the time of the passing, they're 6 and 2. And so we've already gone through such developmental challenges, changes during that time. And so presence of needing a parent there, that's something that I get challenged with a lot.
Right. And I think, we can look at it on a practical level, but I think one of the things that I like to speak to parenting is that we're emotionally supporting these little beings. And, that often typically falls on the mom just by nature of our more maternal ways. So I'm not gender biasing this in any way. I'm just saying that I often hear that we carry the emotional weight of because we're holding on to everybody's little hearts. And we are not only trying to feed them, we're trying to make sure they're getting all of their emotional needs met. So what is that like?
Yeah. The emotional piece has definitely been something that I find it almost a gift at the same time to be able to carry that.
Right.
But while managing my grief, also helping them navigate their grief.
Right.
So from day one, it has never been like, you know, how can I explain it? It's never been we don't cry about it, like express. Like it is a place that we look at pictures of him all the time.
So
We talk about him all the time. So creating that space of being like, this is a safe place to talk about it. And it's actually like making it normal. And maybe culturally, maybe even like historically, I think it's a lot of like pushing under the rug, like this has happened, and like let's not make it awkward for anybody. But I love when people come up to me or to the boys and just be like, say anything about their dad.
Right.
It just keeps his spirit alive, and it brings a sense of normalcy to them that like we can continue talking about him and helping them feel their emotions in that sense, right? And at the same time, my eldest definitely has had moments of like not wanting to share his tears, which I would save space for him on that, but also letting him know that it's okay to cry. And just because he's a boy, it doesn't mean that he can't cry.
Right.
So helping them navigate the grief and letting them see me navigate it as well.
Right.
That's probably, I would say, is like the biggest piece that I can share about that.
Yeah.
Is not always letting them see me being like this strong person that's just kind of, being like, I have to rise up, and letting them see me break down and letting them see me like, he's sad today. He used to make the breakfast, and I miss having that sandwich that I used to have ready.
Right.
So yeah, just allowing them to see me have those emotional moments as well.
Right.
I think it's really important.
Yeah, I like it. I think I agree with you. I think culturally, probably for everyone, it's a little bit different. I think historically, we come from a place where we did brush things under the rug, and we can't be in a more feeling culture right now. And I love normalizing it is one of the things I speak to a lot is emotional isolation, where we accidentally, because we're not comfortable with our uncomfortable feelings, and our kids think they're not allowed to be uncomfortable and have these uncomfortable feelings, and then they think it's wrong or not allowed, and or no one else feels this way. And what I hear you saying is you're very much normalizing the process.
Yeah, normalizing it, and also there was a thought that came to me as you were saying that, and it was just around also recognizing, and it's specifically what came to me is one time when one of my kids said, "It's just not fair," and
Mm.
instead of putting like a positive, like,
Mhm.
toxicity to it or anything like that, I was
Right.
like, yeah, you know what? It's not fair. And like we can sit in that it's not fair and that we miss him and
Yeah.
like, things like that. So um validating their feelings, but also letting them know that like I feel the same way,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like
You're not alone.
yeah, it's not fair. And not kind of trying to shift it, but we should be grateful for this and stuff. It's like
Mm.
absolutely, it's not fair. And
Yeah. I always say I don't like one emotion to erase another.
right.
Because that sure you can still be grateful for a lot of things, but it doesn't mean you don't get to
Absolutely.
feel sad about something else. Or I love that example that it's not fair, and you're right, it's not.
Yeah.
And let's sit in that, because I want to know what that feels like.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that it's coming to me as we're talking is um, my son had asked me, was like, what are you writing in your journal all the time?
Oh,
And they
interesting.
have this desire now to like have their own journal and write their feelings. And for them, like my youngest one, he's still not, he's more so drawing pictures.
Yeah.
So just taking those moments of whether we do feel angry, sad, grateful, whatever that experience is that we're having around this, like it's safe to share it in all aspects. So going back to like your original question around like carrying that emotional load, it's
Right.
yeah, I mean it's definitely challenging. At the same time, I feel like it's offering them the gift to be able to learn how to manage their emotions, learn how to like sit with their emotions and not be told like, oh, don't cry or like anything like that.
Mhm.
It's um I've never been someone who likes the phrase kids are resilient. I don't know, there's just something about I don't know, there's something about that that's a bit triggering to me. I haven't actually like searched why. Um because yes, kids are resilient, but at the same time, I look at it as like I want my kids to be able to feel each one of those moments, even if they don't feel resilient. That
Right.
makes sense.
Right. Well, I mean, I remember talking to a mom who said, I'm my kid. I tell my child every morning to be brave, and I said, but what if he doesn't want to
Yes.
be? What if today he doesn't feel like being brave? And do we leave space for that too? And I actually think what you're doing is leading to resilience, because I think through your own healing, you're able to offer them a way to move through life it while not ignoring what they're feeling in the moment. And that in itself will allow them to be resilient human beings going forward, because, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter what situation they find themselves in, they know they have a path to feel it
Absolutely.
and to experience it and to be present for it. And if you can do all those things, wouldn't you be resilient?
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you
it's
make the
ultimately
definition.
yeah, it's ultimately leading to resilience. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I think navigating and working through each one of those emotions and sitting with that emotion is what, yes, does get them to the resilience, as opposed to this idea that I have about it that they can only have positive experiences to make them resilient.
I don't know if that's what gives it to them.
Yeah,
I'd be, I would wonder, I would question that. That I think we have to be careful with the definition of resilient. To be resilient doesn't mean I will be strong even when I don't want to be. I'll be brave even when I don't want to be. I think resilience is I can still, feel nervous, unsure, scared, all those things, and I can feel those things all the way through and keep going.
I love that. Yes.
Not that it's not, not that I have to push those things away to in an effort to be resilient.
yeah, like almost put on a mask, right?
Right, yeah. Okay, so let me ask you this last question that means actually a lot to me because I know we're gonna put it in the context of what you've been through, but when people have children, we all of a sudden our family roles, all of the roles shift, and we get labels. We become not just sisters or daughters, or wives or girlfriends. We become mothers, and our parents become grandparents, and our partners become, filling whatever your partner is, filled another parent role. So in your situation, again, there's a shift because I think that's with someone coming into your family and also someone leaving your family. And so again, everyone had to shift. So talk to me about the shifting of roles when you lose your other half as a parenting partner and you're all of a sudden on your own in this solo parenting world and everyone's now having to change their current role.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that question because, first of all, as much as in an outside perspective, I'm a solo parent. I could not do what I'm doing without my village family and my sisters and my parents and so many other people in my life like support me in in areas that I'm so blessed to have, and I know not people in similar situations to me or the exact same situations to me don't necessarily have that. So I do really want to take a moment to like just hold so much gratitude for that I have in my life because it would it's it's just incredible the amount of support I have at the same time. Of course, roles have shifted so significantly. Like my parents helped me so much that they've almost shifted their role from being the fun grandparents that they go to their house and get all the candy and like all that stuff to actually being like a second set of parents to them.
Right. Yeah.
And that there's there's such a gift in that, but there's also such like a sadness in that too. For me, this is like my perspective. That my parents are, they're wearing a hat that maybe they didn't think they would have to wear again. And so roles like that have shifted a lot.
Yeah. I love your honesty.
Yeah, and I know they love it. Like they are just like they relish in having any time that they can with the boys. And but yeah, ultimately like their roles have shifted. My sisters, again, they're definitely the fun aunts, but they also wear this hat of being almost like the second mom sometimes. And then we have a group of friends that have now taken on, especially one of Imran's really one of his best friends has almost carried on a role of stepping into that masculine energy in their life, just like my dad has. But yes, one of his best friends and cousins has just like taken that hat where he will come to sporting events. He'll come and see them every, almost every week. Just and it's also so nice to see that.
Yeah.
But of course it's shifted because they used to be like we'd see them maybe like once or twice a month, if that, and now it's like we have sleepovers with him and his wife. So it's just roles between people. I'm gonna reference it as the before and after have definitely I see that. And then there's another part where you people that you thought would be in your life forever are no longer in your life. I think again, I'm gonna mix up my words here a little bit, but I think there's like a famous saying or something that when you go through like a marriage, have kids, or go through death, you really see the people that are going to be in your life. And so not only have we witnessed and have welcomed so many great people into our life from this tragedy that's happened, but we've also lost, people in that as well. That aren't alongside this journey. That's on the other side. So there's a sadness in that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that when you move through these kinds of experiences, naturally, everyone shifts. And I always think the right people line up where they need to be. I call them my angels in their, real form here beside us. The people who lean in. And it's not that I hear people say this, well, you'll know who your friends are. It's not like
No.
that. I just think it's it's who they are. If they're being their true versions of themselves, how they can support you through it and how they show up will then impact everybody else. And people lean into, some people just lean into those roles and other people lean out. And it is sad. It's both, grateful for the ones who leaned in and become different roles for your children. And then you do miss the ones that just isn't, it wasn't the right place or fit for what you're currently experiencing.
Yeah. And speaking to, getting, seeing roles shift, but also going back to when I said about this village that I had a really hard time in the beginning, and I still do have moments in that where I struggle in terms of leaning into the support. And I know as moms, and I'm gonna say moms, but I'm also gonna like create that space for like any parent um, feeling like leaning on that help can be challenging at times. And you just don't feel like you have it. Like, I got it, don't worry. And I really had to surrender to like, if I'm gonna give my boys the best version of myself, have to, I have to lean into the support that I have. And that it's okay to lean into that support. That doesn't make you an inadequate mom. That doesn't make you, I carry a lot of guilt around that, around, the times that I need for myself in order to fill my cup, to pour into myself, to continue this journey on finding myself back to my home. I carry a lot of guilt when I need to lean on their support. At the same time, I have a soft voice inside of me saying it's okay to do that, right? Because your boys are then going to get the best version of you.
100%. I'm so glad you shared that. I think it's really hard. I think we're not naturally willing to raise our hand to ask for help, to lean in. It's created this fierce independence that we can manage it all. And I'll be the first to admit that's something I still work with. I just feel like I can do it alone.
Yeah.
And I think I can figure it out. Whether that's sometimes growing my practice or doing these podcasts or raising my children, all of it, or just even being human. I sometimes think I've got this, I don't need anyone, I can do it. I can feel very self-reliant, and that's not always serving.
It's not, yeah. I have this sort of these words that I say to myself. It's like, Natasha, you can either sit in survival, you can survive, or you can create. And the creation is leaning into that support. It's leaning into your resources. And if I'm going to be sitting in survival, how is that really not just serving me, but serving like my boys?
Right.
So that's something that I have to take yourself out of autopilot, right? Take yourself out of survival. And doing that was implementing a lot of my rituals, waking up a lot earlier, doing my meditation, doing my journaling, getting myself, creating that life and that this version of myself that's always been there, and leaning on the help to be able to still, get to that life that I want to create.
Right. I have one last question for you.
Yes.
And I know we did kind of go over the questions because you were so brave to come on here, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't ask you something that you felt uncomfortable with. And so if you don't want to answer this question, please just let me know. But you touched on something that's very meaningful to me. You talked about fear. And I think that I bumped up against fear in my journey in a way I never thought I would. I actually did I was hosted on another podcast, and the whole thing was on fear. And so talk to me about how you moved through fear, because living your life from that place is exhausting and doesn't allow you to get out of survival and, as you say, create. I love that. So can you touch on that for me?
Yeah. I'm still very much going through it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and me too, to be honest. I still bump up against, that's why I asked.
And I think that these journeys that we're on are just like, you're never really at the end, right?
No.
Healed to me is stagnant.
Right.
Is a stagnant feeling.
100%.
Healing is like this continuous expansion. And I feel like I would rather continue to be like, I don't think I'll ever look at myself as healed. Because then it's just so.
Well, why would you want to?
Yeah.
That's the same as saying, I'm done learning.
Right.
Whether that's learning about myself or those around me or my experiences, I never want to stop learning. And so I think healing is the ongoing journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fear it's really been a coming of the mindset shift. Like, from being fearful, and self-doubt and uncertainty. Those are a lot of words that stand out to me, and not just my adolescent time and teenage time and young adult life. It's just I've always been kind of like, when is the other shoe gonna drop? What's gonna happen here? And then when you have such a real thing that happens to you, that is, and I don't want to say happens to you, but happens in your life, that is uncertain, like you weren't expecting it, like how could I have not seen this? There's just this really big part of it where I'm still fighting, and healing through a lot of like trusting. It's really just leaning into trust and surrender. And that's not easy all the time. It's really not. But if there's one thing that I can share, is that every time I have leaned into the trust and the surrender, like it is just amazing. Like the universe does really have your back.
It really does.
It's so crazy. Like I can't say how many times where I'm just like, oh my gosh, if I had done this, this is what my road would have been like. But just like leaning into the trust and surrender, that not separating myself from an outcome and just being like, this is what this experience is meant to be. So again, coming back to the present and just leaning into that experience and knowing that anything that's meant to be in my life, whether it be a situation, people, whatever that may look like, you're so supported at the end. So it's almost like continuing that mantra of like trust and surrender, and that you are supported. It's not easy. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to trust when life has, handed you something that was so unexpected and was what felt like the shoe dropping, and then to say, okay, we'll just trust. So, my mantra has always been, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And sometimes when you're in that being spot, you're thinking, how is this? Are you sure? Are you sure this is the universe or whatever you believe in? Are you sure this is where I'm supposed to be? Because this feels pretty scary and uncertain and uncomfortable. And I hear you, trust, surrender, patience.
Oh yeah, patience is a big one. And also when you are living, or when I've been living from a fear-led space, how is that actually serving me? Like, if I can reflect back on the times that I have been in those moments of like wanting to, like, just having a grip on a situation, or just, needing to like know what was going to happen, or all of that, the anxiety that was constantly filled in like my body, the way that I physically felt, the way that I mentally felt, like it's just draining.
It's a terrible feeling.
It's a very terrible feeling.
I like to get really honest with fear, because often when I have parents see me, they are very afraid of an outcome that has yet to happen. It's futuristic. And I often say to them, let's get honest about that. And I'm honest about it with my kids too. I'll say, it's not my job to be afraid for you. That isn't it. But here are some of the things I am feeling afraid of right now. And I just want to call them out. I want to say them out loud, partly because it helps me see how I'm not staying in the moment. And then it says, okay, we can challenge it. Do I really need to be afraid of that?
Right.
Because if I can trust and be patient, I don't really need to, and it will run your life.
It will run
It
your
will
life.
drive you to a place that you never wanted to be.
Yes.
And it's not a lot of fun to be sitting in that space.
Yes. And I'm still educating myself on a lot of this stuff, and like I'm in no place to like fully come onto a podcast and share this. But like if anyone gets a chance to get into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, like he talks so much about, even having like that thought when you put it out into the field, like if you're gonna live that way, like it can get attracted that way. So, like you can attract the fear-based stories that you are living in your life. So much of it is just like his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I mean, it's such deep work, and it's challenging work, but there's such power in it. And if you can commit, and like I have chosen to commit to like just because again, like I said, sitting in those fear-based situations or that fear-based mindset, it's not serving me or anybody. So yeah,
and that energy is a terrible energy to be.
And the kids can feel it.
Everyone can.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think that's so funny you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza, because I think a huge turning point for me was reading his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I've read Becoming Supernatural, and I really have found his work to be instrumental in my healing process. So I'm glad you brought up his name, because he's so well known, but for anyone who doesn't know him or hasn't read any of his books, I would strongly invite you to open it up, because it was pivotal for me and clearly for you. And so, and we didn't even talk about this before.
We didn't.
We did not talk about books we've read or things we've done to inspire us and lead us on this journey. And so I do invite my listeners to look into him, or to anyone that feels right for you as a place to start. But I'm glad we share that in common. I am a huge fan.
Yeah. I do have Supernatural as well. And if I could finish that book, if I could finish Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself in one sitting, I would. Yeah. I was just like, I got into it and I was just like, and it's just such interesting work, and it's just such the power shift that you actually have control of your life through your thoughts is just such it's just such a crazy realization for me that I'm survive or create, Natassia.
Which one do you
want to choose? Right?
Yeah, and I think it does allow you to lean into your life in a way of love, because you start getting excited when you have that energy. You wake up in the morning and you're excited to do the things you're going to do that day, and I think he even says, like, fall in love with your life. And even look at today, I wake up, the sun is shining, I've got my podcast gear out, and I'm sitting down to have this conversation with you. What couldn't be more fun?
Right.
And so it does elevate that energy, and then we give that to those around us. And especially being parents, why wouldn't you want to give the gift of that beautiful energy, not only for yourself, but for your kids, and then extending it, so that beautiful ripple effect to those around you. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I always say this: my most healed friends are the most joyful to be with, because there's so much peace. Yes. And people talk about, I hear this all the time when I say, what do you want for your children? What do you desire for them? And again, not our place to have wants and desires on their behalf, but if you could want and desire something for your children, what would it be? And I hear happiness. And I find that a little bit tricky, because happiness is an emotional experience. And while I also want that for my children, I want them to be at peace with their lives. Yeah. If I can have a gift that I give them, to trust themselves, to be patient, to surrender, to know that they're here to create that ripple effect, whatever they do, to find purpose. And I know that's a lot of wants and desires, but ultimately that when they do that there's peace there.
Peace, yeah. And if there was one word, not even just to my kids, but what I strive towards is just peace. And to me, peace is like you know, the ups and the downs, you're always just gonna feel at peace. Peace doesn't mean that your life is always gonna be perfect.
No.
It's just at peace knowing that this is what I'm meant to go through. This is what I'm meant to experience. And being in the peace of that and just knowing that you're gonna be okay through that. That to me is just that's the ultimate. Like that's the ultimate is just being at peace.
Right. What a gift to give yourself.
What a gift to give yourself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on. I don't think that could have gone any better. Everyone gets nervous when they come on here. It's so hard to be brave, to get, to be so willing to share. And I really appreciate it because I think there are so many gems here for listeners. And I think that a lot of people can appreciate your story and probably are quite thankful to hear someone come on and talk about these things because it's I know there's others out there who have lost someone meaningful to them, to their family of origin. And I think they'll appreciate knowing some of the things you did to get onto that field.
Yeah, thanks for having